Hey everyone, how's it going? Thanks so much for tuning in. Today we're moving towards the first step of the restoration end of our 62 GMC build. If you haven't seen the last several episodes, I've got a link to the entire build playlist down in the description below so you can catch up to where I'm currently at. I've been knee-deep in fabrication for a while now, but I'm happy to say that all of that is pretty much finished up. I've had the entire body mounted to the frame, double-checked everything, all the gaps lined up, wheel placement, all that stuff looks fantastic. I'm really excited to be finally at this stage. But this video is going to be a lot of fun too because I'll be finishing up all of my welding. You guys will see a little bit more in depth all of the stuff that I ended up making to fit the 62 body on the 74 C10 frame, and we're going to get it all stripped down. I've got an appointment to get this whole thing powder coated, so I'm going to rebuild it from the ground up. It's going to be awesome. Before we get started, I'd like to extend a huge thanks to GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco for sponsoring this build. The whole point of doing all of this work is so that we can create a Restomod on a budget that uses as many factory-backed parts as possible. And what's cool about that is that when it's all done, when it comes to serviceable components, we can go to any GM Genuine Parts or AC Delco distributor, or if we didn't want to work on it, or the truck was sold and somebody else didn't want to work on it, it could be taken to any service center or any GM dealership and have work done on it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't have 62 underpinnings anymore. It's a combination of square body Chevy and 04 Escalade, so parts are plentiful. So it's been a really fun journey so far, and if you guys have not subscribed already, I really encourage you to do so and make sure that notification box is selected, because I've only scratched the surface. There's still a bunch more things to do, and this truck is gonna be sweet. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. At this point, the back half of the frame is complete. I also ended up making that rear cross brace bolt in as well. Beforehand, when I was doing all of my alignment and fitting the bed and whatnot, I had it tacked in place just so it wouldn't move, but I ended up actually welding in some like 4.5 inch long bolts to go through the riser that I made and the frame itself, to where that thing can be slipped on and a nut put on the other side to secure it, so it'll be bolt in just like the rest of the bed rails. The only other thing that I really need to do back here is to test fit the new fuel tank, make sure nothing else needs to be modified for that. I've got to install the shocks. I've also got to install the front shocks. Basically just, again, making sure everything fits right. And I've got to do a little bit more finish welding in the front. So we're getting there. Well, I'm excited to say that the frame is finished. I'm finally at the point of stripping this thing all the way down. I think it's going to turn out really nice when it comes back from powder coat. But in the meantime, like I said, I wanted to make triple sure that everything fit and lined up and that I didn't need to do any extra fab work, because this is the time to do all of that, not when it's all nice and pretty. So I have test fitted everything. Obviously that new fuel tank fit in there really nice. I've test fitted the front and rear shocks. I ended up doing shock relocation brackets and extenders, whatever you want to call them, front and rear, so I could use factory 74 C10 shocks. So that worked out really nice. That's going to be great for serviceability down the road. I also ended up actually upgrading the rears to AC Delco adjustable shocks, so I can actually adjust the ride height as needed to account for different loads. And the other kind of random thing that I ended up doing actually turned out pretty good was that little X brace in the frame. It'll stiffen things up a little bit. I mean, wasn't like super necessary, but I had some steel lying around and I just felt a bit creative, so to speak, so I whipped that up real quick. So the main thing that's left is pulling the motor and transmission back up and then stripping the frame all the way down. Once again, I'd like to extend a huge thanks to GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco for sponsoring this build. As I move towards completing the truck's structure, I've been in the midst of preparing for a complete rebuild of the chassis and suspension using as many factory-backed parts as possible. That way, there's no guesswork when it comes to reassembly and no concern of long-term reliability. I can trust that the parts that I'm using will work as intended by GM. Even though I'm using lowering components, the way things are going back together will still allow me to use factory control arms, shocks, leaf springs, and shackles. I'll be replacing the parts that are easy to replace and rebuilding everything else, including installing new rear suspension bushings and rebuilding the front lower control arms. Once the chassis comes back from Powdercoat, I'll certainly have my work cut out for me, but the end result will be as good as it would have been if it rolled off the assembly line. Check out some of the links that I have down in the description below of some of the components that I'm using, and while you're there, you can use AC Delco's Parts Finder to input your vehicle and see what kind of parts they offer for it. I just got back from dropping the frame off at the powder coating place. They're gonna get it all blasted and coated in like a semi-gloss black. I think it's gonna look really nice. I am also really looking forward to getting that thing put back together, because as far as I'm concerned, all of the super hard parts of this build is all finished up. Of course, with the exception of doing the bodywork and paint and that kind of stuff, which I will have content on at some point. So if you haven't subscribed already, definitely consider doing so, and make sure that notification box is selected, because I've got a lot more content to finish this build up, and it's coming along really nice. I appreciate everybody's support through all of this so far. It's been an awesome journey. But as far as additional content coming up, I also have some engine content. So obviously we've got that motor and transmission from the 2004 Escalade, and while all of it was very much mechanically sound, I want to go through everything, replace gaskets, clean everything up, replace some accessories, and so on and so forth, just to make it look as close to new or just thoroughly refreshed as possible. So I'm probably going to start working on that next while I figure out the plans for the bodywork. Also, when it comes to putting the frame and stuff back together, I mentioned having to rebuild some of the suspension components, so I'll end up putting some B-roll for that in one of the upcoming videos or so, just to kind of show you guys the process and what I went through to rebuild the entire chassis. So anyway, that's gonna wrap it up for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Please don't forget to leave a like down below, because it really helps the videos a lot. Of course, once again, a big thanks to GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco for sponsoring this series. Check out all of the links I have in the description box below to learn more about some of the parts that I'm using, or to look up some parts for yourself. I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.